Alastair McIntosh is a great red-bearded Caledonian fountain of insight, passion, and action, all of it devoted to bringing the human presence into a proper relationship both with the natural world and with the ultimate mystery which his Presbyterian ancestors called God. A successful activist, author, and lecturer, he speaks with authority on human ecology and on the spiritual basis of social and environmental activism. Tell me about Eigg and what happened in Eigg.
Well, I have to go back a little bit to do that, because I was raised on the nearby island of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides of Scotland. And when I was 22 in 1977, after graduating from Aberdeen University, I went with voluntary service overseas, the equivalent of your QSO, out to Papua New Guinea. And when I was there, I became aware of the importance of land tenure. And I got back to Scotland and found that whereas Papua New Guineans owned their land, we were not in control of our land. And around that time, I was approached by a crofter called Tom Forsyth, a small-scale agriculturalist called Tom Forsyth, who was wanting to kind of start a revolution on the island of Eigg by proposing an Isle of Eigg trust, which would bring Eigg into community land ownership. So he asked me if I would become involved in that. We launched the trust in 1991, and after a long battle, in June 1997, the island came into community land ownership.
I know enough about Scottish history to remember Culloden and the clearances, but somehow it hadn't occurred to me that the end result of that was that to this day, those are still great feudal estates. They never did get broken down into any kind of other ownership.
Well, you see, you're a Cameron, I'm a McIntosh. Traditionally, the clan chief was not a landowner. I would say the clan chief was a landholder, holding it on behalf of the clan. Donald, if you look at the bardic poetry, it speaks of the clan chief as being the highest apple on the tree, but the trees of the whole people. The place was for the benefit of the people.
And in the revisioning, you talk about the three-way human ecological relationship between community, nature, and the inner self of each person.
Yes. You see, I think when we talk about community today, we too often have a very shriveled and shrunken understanding of what community can actually be. And we confuse community with society. Society is only one aspect of community. And so I see it as having three faces. Satish Kumar of the Schumacher College refers to it conveniently as soil, soul, and society. Soil, community with the earth, with the land. Soul, community within ourselves, the inner life, and ultimately, if you believe in spiritual reality, our connection to God, to the Great Spirit. And society, community with one another. And so the fullness of community is this whole relationship with what life is about.
I'm surprised, given that perspective and given what you've said about the British Empire, that you quote Kipling quite often in your work. You quote a huge range of people, but I was sort of surprised to find Kipling among them. What is it that appeals to you about Kipling?
You've got to remember that Kipling's mother was a MacDonald. She was one of us, Donald. And when you read Kipling, there's two sides to him. On the one side, he's an apologist for the empire. On another side, he understands oppressed people, and they're both there. Now, I think that very often when you're dealing with an oppressor, it's helpful to take the oppressor's own writings and turn it round on them. Bring out the contradictions, open doors that they hadn't realized were there.
It was just an interesting little side point as I went through there. I found you even quoting If, which has got to be as much a Victorian sturdy anthem as there is, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Hell and High Water is fundamentally a book about hope and moral behavior in the face of a huge and multifaceted threat to human persistence, I guess. Right? Is that a fair description for?
Yeah, you see. Yeah. Back in 2007, when I was working on developing this book, I was concerned that many environmentalists were believing that by tweaking this and that and putting a solar gizmo on the roof, we could solve our problems, Whereas when I looked at how the sums added up, we are so colossally complicit in energy consumption from non-sustainable sources in the developed world that we could not change what we are doing without an upheaval that would almost certainly be totally politically unacceptable to all but perhaps about 5% of the people. Now, this is a profoundly depressing scenario, but if we think we're going to stop the global warming that is already coming on and the climate change we are already seeing quite radical signs of, then we are probably kidding ourselves if the mainstream science of climate change is correct, and I believe it probably is correct, that these scientists are not fools. So where does that leave us? I think it leaves us without very much cause for optimism. And so when we try to pretend optimism, like many environmentalists have done, we're actually living a lie and setting ourselves up for failure. And my feeling is that we have to renounce the optimism, but never let go of hope.
Alastair McIntosh, Scottish land reformer, human ecologist, and green theologian. If you enjoyed this interview, you may also want to see our interviews with Satish Kumar and David Orton. For the Green Interview, I'm Silver Donald Cameron. See you next time.